Hello, Anthony. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm excited to be here and excited to see you again. It's been a while.
It's been a while. And then you think like, wow, it's been a while. Like we've been doing this for a while now. This is 2015 was when I started. I don't know when did you get started in this space, Anthony?
Before that, but we came in contact with each other, I think, through my caregiver summit,
Yep.
and we ran three of those. And so that's I think when I reached out to you,
Yeah.
and
You were doing
yeah,
virtual events before I think a lot of people were, before it was kind of cool, right? When we learned during the pandemic how much we could get done virtually. So I appreciate you, yeah, connecting
exactly.
with me that way. Well, we like to start the show with some words of encouragement from the Happy Healthy Caregiver jar. And I'd love to get your thoughts on today's message.
Oh
These are
boy.
just things, no, just things I've collected. No wrong answers here. It says, I love myself when I am laughing. And that's a quote by an author and documentary filmmaker, Zora Neale Hurston. I've started like looking up because like sometimes we see these quotes and we're like, who are these people? Unless you're, Oprah or some commonly known. But I love myself when I am laughing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's actually a timely quote because last night after the rush back, as I was telling you, I know this is time dated and all that kind of stuff, but I had a day yesterday in my life where we had to go to a funeral and come back. And so you're feeling a little, but there's an event every year in Charlotte called Charlotte Squawks. And it's
Hmm.
sort of like a Saturday Night Live, but it spoofs everything local and national with parody songs, and it never disappoints. So I found myself hysterically laughing. And the thing is, you don't get to do that a whole lot. If you really think about like belly laughs,
Mm-hmm.
uncontrollable, letting yourself go. And it's like a cleansing type of thing because and especially on a day like that when you're trying to do that. So if anything, I would say people need to laugh more. In fact, I even talk about that in some of my keynotes about bringing more humor into your life.
Yeah, I know. We take ourselves way too seriously sometime. And,
Oh yeah,
I appreciate, you sharing that you were at a family grief event, and thank you. Yeah, we were talking before the show comes on. And sadly, it's part of the circle of life. And I think in the work that we do, we hear and see a lot of it, more of it, but it's when it strikes something personal, that's at a whole new level. And I'm
yeah,
glad that Charlotte Squawks was there for you. Is that like a physical place or is that a
yeah.
virtual thing
You
that
go to
people
a
tell?
theater. Hmm.
Okay, so you had tickets when, after your
Yeah,
whirlwind event. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I will link to this theater in the show notes. And yeah, laughter is medicine. Went to a laughter yoga session once. Have you ever done that?
I've written about them, but I've
Okay.
I've never done that. Yeah,
We did one as part of our daughterhood, when we were doing in-person daughterhood events in Atlanta. And I didn't know what to expect, but yeah, no movement. I don't really know why they call it yoga. It's just like, well, I guess you're moving your belly muscles, but it did work. It was, everyone left in a lighter mood. Well, I
evidently
want
you start out laughing, but it's all fake, and then
fake.
it really turns into like real
Yeah,
laughter.
yeah, you
Yeah,
see how it's really is contagious
that's crazy.
to laugh. Well, I would love for you to share a little bit about your caregiving journey with us, Anthony. Like, what is your personal caregiving story?
So my for I'll back up even a little bit further. So everybody has their entry point into senior care, caregiving, that kind of thing. So I was a professional in hospital
Mm,
administration and public relations and things like that. And but I've always also been a musician throughout my life. And when I was in hospital work, I was gigging in nightclubs full time and got tired of that. And I was looking for an outlet for my music and my voice. And stumbled into a continuing care retirement community. So
mm,
this was circa 1992, dating myself, but that's kind of where, in many respects, I was a caregiver because I really learned how to become a performer as opposed to just a musician on stage. Because in a band, you're up there and you're playing your instrument, and you're singing. Okay, that's fine. But when you start singing for seniors in a different environment, and you have the you let go of your instrument and you have
mm,
backing tracks and you got a wireless microphone and you're walking around. I mean, music is a therapeutic healing experience.
mm.
And that's really where the journey began. Now, we did come into it, so that was my entry. My interest in caregiving, of course, was based on personal circumstances. So, unfortunately, we had a spurt from 2013 to 2018 when we essentially
Mm.
lost five close family members,
Oh my
like
goodness.
one after the other. So my sister passed. She was 10 years older than me, unexpectedly, like, lung cancer diagnosis, December 17th, died January 14th. Uh,
Wow.
my wife's brother actually passed on December 17th, the day we learned of my wife's, and that was sudden, and it was a crazy accident. So all of a sudden, I had to move my mom from Florida, where she was living with my sister and my brother-in-law, who has since passed as well. But it became a really fast decaying family dynamic, in terms of, okay, when are you getting out of here? So I had basically 6 weeks from the time of my sister's memorial to figure out what we were doing with mom. And that was January of 14, and mom passed in June of 16. Hard to believe that was 8 years
Yes.
ago already. It's crazy. So, yeah. So that, and I had a caregiving experience that was a little bit different than most. So it was not an Alzheimer's or dementia. My mom just had physical ailments, and she was 94 when she passed. And, essentially she had CHF and COPD and things like that, but she was in an independent living community. And, at the end had some, we had some health, home health come in, but not a lot, because you probably hear the story all the time. She couldn't tolerate, whoever we sent
Outside
in.
help. Mm.
So, that was kind of that. And then, she had a hospital incident and just really never came out of that. And, if we do have a chance, I just to speak of hospice, because,
Yeah,
my,
go for
my,
it.
my mother had an amazing hospice experience in um, a care, in a residential kind of hospice. So it was a,
Mm-hmm.
physical place that you went in. She was only there, I think we counted the hours. She went on a Tuesday night and died on a Thursday night. So it was 60 something hours.
Mm.
But it was in many ways a magical, emotional, spiritual experience, because of, the care she received, the people who stopped in, that kind of thing. And, I'm finding that's not always the case, depending on where hospice is administered, and things like that. So, but, as a caregiver, and end of life, if you find the right, and it's appropriate, hospice care just takes things to a different level. And,
Yes, I appreciate you saying that. And I have a friend and a fellow podcaster, Helen Bauer, who offers some hospice navigation type of tips, and does an intro to call there. So I'll link to that so people can kind of learn more. But I think the best tips is word of mouth from, what works for us. I've had great experiences with hospice for the various people in our lives in different scenarios, some in community, some at home, some in a skilled nursing. So but I do think I appreciate you bringing it up, because I think it is an underutilized resource rather, that people don't hear about until later. Was there anything that you were wishing you had gone in sooner? Like, I know for our first experience, we were like, wow, we didn't know this. We would have come here a while back.
no, well, because I'm connected to the community of healthcare providers here, I already knew of the place. In fact, they hold local healthcare meetings there every
Okay,
month, actually.
good.
So I'd already been there. So it's weird when I go back there, because I passed the room that she
Mm,
passed in. So that's a little strange. But now she was in a situation where, without getting, they had to do a major surgery on her to,
mm.
because her intestines became flipped and things, and they had it was a
Oh
mess.
my gosh.
And it was one of those situations where 6 years before, this is how the stamina and persistence this woman had. She had a screw put in her neck to stabilize her spine at 88. And we were taking bets. She's not coming out of this surgery. She did.
Yes.
And she lived 6 more years. So
Mm,
when we put her in hospice, I actually had the conversation with the hospice folks to say, all right, I know all the things about hospice in terms of, like, if she doesn't, because she might surprise us. and
Go
then
ahead. And sometimes people come off of hospice, and that's okay too. I
and then
think.
what happens? Yeah. And so my
Mhm.
mother-in-law, in another case, she actually had the same thing. It was supposed to be a residential hospice, really turned out more to be like a hospital hospice type
Mm.
setting. Wasn't the best, but in essence, she was kicked out because she was too
Too
healthy.
healthy. It's a
And then
good problem.
went into assisted living and wasn't there but 4 days and then passed. So we didn't have a whole lot of advance notice that she
Yeah.
was going to be sick and have to need this care, but it was becoming really evident. I mean, that's the part where it breaks your heart because you start asking about questions like, because some of her friends had moved into assisted living. She
Mm.
was in independent living. And she said, do you think I can go where they're at? And I said, Mom, it's really up to you to,
Yeah.
see if you want to embrace your rehabilitation. But, once we brought
It's
her
a
to the
great way to
hospice,
phrase it. Like,
um,
hey, it's you hold the cards.
yeah, she did and she didn't because, once we weaned her of the 15 medications she was on, the first night at hospice, except she made us swear that we wouldn't take her sleeping pills away. So, uh,
That's
but
part of comfort
literally,
care, maybe for some. Yeah.
she literally did not wake up after that. So, I mean, I think she knew we were there. And then my son flew in special just to see her.
Mm.
So, yeah, we had no advance preparation, but I was aware of what existed. And, I knew she couldn't stay in the hospital and get hospice care because they were just itching to get her out type of
Mm.
thing. That's a shame of it as well as that, nobody seems to want anybody to pass on their watch, right?
Mm.
Nursing homes famously, if people fall or whatever, they won't even try to pick them up or whatever. They'll call it the emergency department. So I think people as caregivers need to be aware of the rules and the regulations of each of the places you're thinking about with mom or dad,
Yes.
because we learned, like just from my daughter-in-law yesterday, the assisted living that her mom was in was just had a set of rules that you had to follow, and that's not always going to result in the best care. So to understand some of those things going in uh, would be a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's a benefit of like connecting with other caregivers and getting that support so that you can kind of learn from other people, because it's not really until you're in the trenches. You can read about these things right on in the website or paper. Well, Anthony, you brought up so many different things. I wanted to ask, like you had I don't even know if this is a term, but I'm going to call it compounded grief. Like you had a really intense section there of just grieving people, but also grieving your life change of like needing to take care of your mother, while still grieving. And we're always still grieving, like it never ends. Like we've just,
Sure.
brought up their anniversaries. My dad's gonna be past 10 years this August. And it's like you just, the grief comes apart. But how did you cope? Like what helped you during this time of like, I'm calling it compounded grief, and like navigating initially for mom and throughout that, like what has helped you?
Well, my partner in crime, my wife, we've been together for 36 years, so we had to lean on each other. Then first her, me on her, and then in quick succession, her father passed. So my mom passed, or my sister passed in January of 14. Her father passed in August of 14, and
Mm.
then my mom in 16, and then her mom in 18. So, and her mom was a pretty intense caregiving for her and her sisters, that kind of thing. So first of all, that.
Yeah, leaning on your partner is a great.
Right. And, the other thing is, we do have a great life balance. We remember when to, and we were talking before this about this, we take time to have our vacations or to getting away and those types of things. So that's important. Of course, I have a keynote that I give. I presumptuously call it the meaning of life, because
Mm.
it's
Tell us,
it's
what is the meaning of
yes, the
life?
meaning of life. Well, after spending thousands of hours with elders in these communities. And then I self-published a book long ago now, 2003, 2004. It's still on Amazon. Who moved my dentures?
Oh, I'll
But
find it and link to it.
the whole point of that was, I was taking off on who moved my cheese. Who moved my cheese was about resiliency in the workplace, right? And who
Yes.
moved my dentures was a resiliency in elders a lot of the people who I interviewed, they're all stories basically. And my keynote's a bunch of those stories followed by a song that relates to that, like having purpose is one of the things I learned from everybody.
Yes, story of
And
Esther. I
yes,
remember.
this, yes, the story of Esther.
So
I mean,
Esther was
that's
a real person.
yeah, I mean, so the story of Esther, I mean, and I'm still in touch with her. In fact, for my podcast, Your Brain on Music, one of the segments is going to be, we're going to analyze a song in each episode, like the neuroscience behind it, and then also the musical side beside it. But also every episode, we're going to hear from people who have stories of music in their life and what makes an impact. So
Cool.
Esther was in an assisted living where I was performing, and she became my designated heckler. Um,
Love that.
so we would go back and forth with each other. This actually gets to one of the points of coping, actually, which is purpose and right. Um, so anyway, she summoned me one day when I was going up to the assisted living, told the activity director, I want him to come and sing for me. And she was in the hospital. So on the way over, the activity director said, "Hey, by the way, she died and was revived, and she's in cardiac intensive care." I said, "And she wants me for what?" She goes, "I don't know." So we get there, and Esther's there, and her daughter's there, and Esther's flirting with me. It's kind of comical, and her daughter's saying, "Mom, he's a married man," all this kind of stuff. Anyway, Esther wants one song, "Because He Lives." Beautiful song. Because he lives, I
Yeah.
can face tomorrow. Except, the one thing is, I may live in the Bible Belt, but I'm from South Philadelphia. And, I grew up with, Frank Sinatra and the Great American Songbook. And they were the first songs I actually performed. I joke, you come down from upstairs, and on the wall, on one wall is a picture of the Lord, and the other wall is a picture of Frank Sinatra. And
Yeah.
you bow before Frank every morning. Uh, so I said, Esther, I don't know that song. I said, but I'll learn it for you. So I sang her Unforgettable because, it was she was unforgettable. The moment was
The Nat
unforgettable.
King
So
Cole. Nat.
yeah. And
Oh,
and so I learned the song, and I had a recording studio at the time. Now it's my streaming studio. And I sent it to her on a CD. She was back in the assisted living, and I thought all was well and good. And then I found out she was in hospice, and then I found out she passed. And
mm.
I said, I don't make it a habit to go to the funerals of residents who I've sung for, because that's going to be a permanent condition.
Yeah, you'd be very
It's
busy.
very busy. But I
Yes.
did go to Esther's funeral. I don't know why. Something was just tugging at me to go. And I go, and of course the song on the program is Because He Lives. And
Oh,
then the daughter came up to me and gave me a hug and started crying. And she told me, and others told me, she had not cried until I came into the room and she saw me. So this gets to the crux.
yes.
Um, Essentially, on Esther's last day of life, they played my CD with the one song over and over and over and over again, until the daughter actually knelt down next to her mom and said, and started singing with me, first of all, and then told her mom, it's time, let go. So, that's a moment where you and somehow impacted whatever life is now to whatever life's going to
Right.
be afterwards in
Yeah, you like
someone's
held their
life.
hand basically in this
And yeah,
transition. Yes.
so that song has great meaning for them. And in my podcast, we're going to end every podcast with a viewer or listener who can tell us about a song that has great meaning in their life and why. And so I've already lined up the granddaughter now, because they were both part of this experience,
Yes.
in this. So, having purpose still in your life is, as I think, and in some ways, doing the things I'm doing in the space that I'm doing, that keynotes or TV work. It's in some respects, it's busy work. Could I retire now? Yeah, I could. But am I ready to play pickleball and golf all the time? I
Yeah.
don't think so. There was a great skit on pickleball, by the way, back on that Charlotte Squawks where we started the conversation. But socialization, I talk about that a lot, and social isolation. I mean, there was every other day there seems to be a study on social isolation. There was
Yes.
just one in McKnight's long-term care, again, reporting on two different ones. So thankfully, we have large group of, well, not just family, but friends. And so people joke about us either, being away, visiting family, or traveling with friends, or when we're home having, every single night of the week filled with something. So that's certainly part of it. We talked about humor, that kind of thing. And I make 5 other points: lifelong learning and
Amazing.
gratitude.
So
Um,
that's
you
in the
know,
keynote. And then you've
yeah,
got, I'm going to link to the book. I've got the podcast, Your Brain on Music. I think that's going to amazing. I love the connection with the Esther story that kind of prompted you on your purpose, and how just music has really been a part of people's lives. And like, when, music is a mood shifter. I say that very frequently. Like, music has spoke to me sometimes during those like really weary caregiving moments, to the point where I started creating a caregiver anthem playlist. Like, every time I hear the song, I think this is reminding me of some piece of caregiving. So I'll link to that too, just
yeah,
on Spotify and
maybe,
Pandora. But
yeah,
it's and just changing the mood from when my mom and I were having tough moments. And we've had some beautiful things where we've hired musicians in when she was bedridden. So I've seen it in action there. And tell us more then about, your business or your product, I guess,
yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
Sage Stream.
Yep, sagestream.live. And um, so this was kind of I call it a legacy project, because I like to go out with something that actually brought 2 parts of my life together. So,
Mm,
since the 60s, 70s, late 60s, early 70s, music's been part of my life. I was playing music and playing guitar when I was 10. I was in bands at 13, playing it even in nightclubs underage, that kind of thing. So that's always been that. You heard the shift about how I went to, older adults and that thing.
yes.
So that's been one part of my life. But in the 80s, just because of a series of circumstances, I didn't know I was going to work in healthcare. But at the time, you fall into different circumstances. I was a communication and business major, so um, through TV work and then medical publishing, I wound up in hospital work, and then the shift to aging because of the music. So this is something that brings both of these together, because first I know the issues, right? Social isolation,
You know them and
huge
you've lived
issue,
them.
and live them. Yes,
Yes, yes.
caregiver, caregiver relief, caregiver burden. What's happening in senior communities? Lack of staff, lack of budgets.
Lack of
You
money everywhere. Yeah.
lack of money, or so-called lack of money, depending on on your on your cynical side on any given day, because I could argue that point, but that's a whole nother podcast.
Yes, yes.
But
We'll
yeah,
find the money. I bet we'd find the money. Yes.
yeah, exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. So that's the thing. But so it was a way. So the essence of what it is, it's a live stream, real time, interactive music network. So when we broadcast, we are live, which means if you're a subscriber, there's a chat function and you can communicate with us. Likewise, you could communicate with other viewers.
Yeah.
And I was just, for my newsletter this week on Substack, I was citing this loneliness study and citing SageStream because, if somebody is shut in and can't get out, this is a way, first of all, to become engaged with the artists. You can, make song requests and get shout
Mm,
outs for birthdays or whatever it is. But also, if you're on that platform, you can um, see who else is communicating and what they're saying. And maybe you want to communicate back, track the comments. People do that all the time. Half the time they get lost in the comments and
yeah.
communicating with each other. They forget what they're even listening to. But uh, so it's live, interactive music. We have some other topics, but people early on told me to pick a lane. So I would say 90% is music. So we're interactive from the chat feature, but we also have a Google phone number that people can text if they don't have chat available, because we're on some other platforms like Touchtown TV and Well
Mm,
Zesta and a few others. And so sometimes they're just watching it on monitors but don't have a way to communicate. So we have
that's so
that.
nice.
We rebroadcast. We have an archive, but the real I mean,
It's different
our
performers, right? You've got variety,
absolutely. So yeah, it's just not me.
which
I
would be
tried this.
fine, but
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I know. I tried it a few years ago. I thought I was on the cusp of something, but it was just before the pandemic, and it was before I kind of conceived this on a broader, and it was, scale, and it was morely motivated because we got fiber optics in our neighborhood. Now I could stream, but I didn't know what I didn't know about streaming, about the
Mm,
equipment I needed. And so I spent a lot of time just getting a lot of that in order. But I quickly started recruiting artists from all kinds of sources. So so you were a guest on one of my caregiver summits. Another guest was Grace Meadows, who founded Music for Dementia in the UK.
mm,
Great organization. And Grace, put a call out, and I have several musicians from the UK who are on the platform, who, in many respects, incorporate. I don't advertise it as music therapy, but I do believe that when you're interactive, and if an activity director is actually using this the correct way at the front of the room, taking requests and relaying notes, and then continuing the program after by talking to the residents about,
mm.
why did you request that song, and almost coming up with the playlist of the community, that kind of thing. It is music therapy, but our UK artists truly have aspects of music therapy and how they conceive their programs,
Yes.
and then put them on. So we start out with a bunch of folks from there, all kinds of artists, a Scottish singer who does all kind of amazing things with harmony and looping, a guy named My Maid George, and he looks like a little Monty Python character, but he just sings with his guitar on his couch. He has 2,000 songs, but he has different cues in his performance that help with memory. Like, one is he wears the same shirt every performance with the same logo, but the
Mm.
shirt changes color. Um, he'll take a snack and a drink of something during the performance because he wants to remind
Oh,
caregivers to say, stay hydrated and stay nourished.
yeah. Plus,
It's
people
that
with
kind of thing.
watching who may be living with dementia forget to eat and drink. It's like
Absolutely.
you model it. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
let me do that. So interesting. Well, this is going to be Sage Stream Live. We're going to link to that. I love that you call it your legacy project. I'm like, it's got me thinking, what's my legacy project? I think there's, well, I studied broadcast journalism at Penn State and then fell into a career in IT and then now doing Happy Healthy Caregiver. In some ways, this podcast is a legacy project, I think, because it will live on
Absolutely.
long
Yeah.
after. But maybe there's a TV show of some sort or something that could kind of bring that full circle with such a cool thing. And music, I mean, music therapy is a thing. But even if you can't call the Sage Stream Live music there, it's definitely we feel it's a mood shifter, and it is music is
Yeah.
therapy. I think none of us will
Absolutely.
argue that. Well, it's you've been around, people that are aging, elders and stuff for the bulk of your career and your life. Like, what do you think aging well? Like, what does that look like? What have you seen?
Well, well, and I do want to get a couple things in before I leave as well on some other stuff. But
Okay.
yes, what have I seen? I think it's all about your attitude. I mean, honestly, um, if you have a great mental outlook, and that's the other thing I talk about, attitude, right?
Mm.
I talk about Jean Kopek in my book and in my speeches. She was a um, person who lived in first continuing care retirement community that I ever sang in, and she was a
Aw.
mild-mannered housewife. Her husband passed. She was a young widow. She raised her kids. She pretty much did nothing but that. That was her sole purpose. But when she came to the community, she participated in everything. So, I sing the word high hope. I sing the song High Hopes with when I make that point. So she had a great attitude about things. Her cup was half full, not empty. And she was in a place that most people would equate and still do because the general public is still not knowledgeable about our world and
Yeah.
even the different levels and what they mean. So she had a great attitude, and that kept her alive. And she came to every one of my programs. And a lot of the seniors I write about in the book and talk about, attitude and gratitude are two of the big things, and gratitude more than anything is the one I always tell people is the one that stuck out for me more than anything after you start talking to people enough. And so,
Mm,
how much do we in our daily lives? Because I think when you express gratitude, end your day thinking about things you're grateful for, um, getting involved in paying it forward and things like that. I think all of those help you, you know, age, and
yes.
all the other things. But I think it has to probably start in your brain, like music. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I love the attitude, gratitude in the music. And you mentioned glass half full or half empty. I put something recently out on Instagram that my glass is refillable. Like I think that, we
Yes.
can keep, we can pour into it with music and with other things. What is you mentioned like travel and loving things, but like what are you doing specifically to focus on your own personal health and well-being right now?
Oh, this is kind of funny. So, because of a series of things that, I'm a hot-headed Italian with a, have a temper at times. So, to take out my frustrations, I started kickboxing. Um, and I think tomorrow will be my 12th class.
How is it?
Uh, it's amazing. It's amazing. You start out on two different sets of bags for 25 minutes, and then you do a whole, it could be a core workout, it could be a weights, it could be the ropes, and it could be anything. That's the particular place I'm going prides themselves on changing the workout. No workout is the same. So your body does not get used to one thing or another. So that is my current mechanism.
Yeah.
But I've always worked out, so this is just amping it up to another level. And I think when you start your day that way, your adrenaline and all those hormones they say are activated when you do this kind of stuff. It just sets you up better for the day. So I've been trying to do them at 8 in the morning. It's not my best time, especially when you've lived your life in broadcasting and as a musician, you're used to the other end of the day,
Yeah.
in the things that I did. And but yeah, that, and of course, when I need to jam and get my guitar out and go in the garage and take out my frustrations on lead guitar, that always helps. So
What are you playing? Is it like when I was growing up, my brothers played guitar. I think it was Smoke on the Water. Is
oh
that
my
the
God,
dun
that
dun
that,
dun
that yeah, first one,
dun?
yeah,
Oh my gosh. I was
Stairway to
like,
Heaven would be the other one they learned.
yeah,
Uh, well, yeah, my repertoire. So I do a solo when I perform locally in brew pubs and whatever like that, and so I could do everything from the Great American Songbook to Taylor Swift, and I have done Taylor Swift songs, in performances, and I have a QR code that is on a banner, and people can link to it, and then they can play Stump the Band because sometimes they'll pick a song I haven't done in 5 years, and I'll try to get that in. If I
so
don't
fun.
know it, then I will learn it by the next time I play. So my repertoire is all over the place. So in that situation, I play guitar, I have backing tracks, a harmonizer. So it basically sounds like a full band. And all the bands
Nice.
I was in forever, I was the bass player because I didn't get in the door quick enough to be the lead guitar player, because everybody wanted to be the lead guitar player because lead guitar player got, attracted all the women. So, but
The face was on the t-shirt. Yes.
yeah, exactly,
Too
exactly.
funny.
So yeah,
Ah,
so that's my repertoire is amazingly diverse.
I love it. And I mean, and that's you're living, and I need more examples. And for me, I'm trying to live an aging well type of life too. It's like I've had a lot of people that haven't kind of made it to those bigger years. And so definitely to be intentional about that. But I'd love to kind of continue the self-care theme with you. I've got a couple questions for you from the self-care journal here,
Sure.
Anthony. What was your favorite activity as a child? What were you doing?
Wow. So it's a whole lot different than now we have six grandkids and what they're doing, that's for sure. Uh, Favorite activity. We didn't have a whole lot. I mean, we played something called stickball or half ball in South Philly.
Yep.
I joked that my pool was the fire hydrant. So it was really our friends and hanging out with our friends uh, pretty much all the time. And some of those grade school friends. So I've been to more grade school reunions than the high school reunions, and certainly no
Mm.
college reunions to speak of. So my grade school friends are still some of my best friends. In life, and you hear that sometimes. But small, Catholic, not small at all, but a Catholic grade school, that kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood in Philly. So yeah, that. Um, that was pretty much it. And, we had a close knit Italian family. So we shuffled back and forth between aunts that were in a town called Hamilton, New Jersey, which is halfway between Philadelphia and Atlantic City. So that was a
Nice.
big part of my life. Yeah.
Too fun. Well, I mean, I grew up in Western Pennsylvania in a small town and with one blinking traffic light. So we had to entertain ourselves quite a bit. And there was a lot of kickball and we kind of like a nighttime hide and seek game we called Monsters. So
Okay.
yeah, lots of fun things there. Have you taken any steps recently to plan or to help simplify your life?
Simplify.
Mhm.
Hmm. Uh,
Streamline, simplify.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my wife and I are both very organized, so we're always decluttering and preparing, in case, if we stay here, we don't stay here, we love where we live and all that kind of stuff. So we're pretty organized that way. But I'm actually probably complicating my life with Sage Stream right now, as opposed to
You can't not do it, I say. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, and it's one of those things when you're an entrepreneur, it's like, we're at that critical 3.5 year juncture where it's either going to go or it's not going to go. And
Hmm.
so, what's the alternative? So,
What do you
um,
need, by the way, to make it go?
subscribers.
Let's put it out there.
It's simple. It's simple. Subscribers. Go to the website, subscribe. I think this is a great caregiver respite tool. And
Hmm.
in fact, so we just graduated from the AARP Age Tech Collaborative. So
Amazing.
only 6% of companies that apply for that pitch to that get accepted. I should have said that way earlier, but it does lend a air of credibility to
Of
what we are
course.
doing.
Yes.
And through that, we were able to deploy surveys, to the AARP, data set, so that's,
Mm,
so every survey came back with 160 responses from caregivers who, by and large, first of all, thought music was one of the best activities for their older loved one. And
hmm.
also the fact that if, seeing how we describe the product and watching a short video, enthusiastically endorsed it. So we had more of a B2B strategy and not a B2C. And now I have to shift a little with redoing our website and also doing some pay per click and things like that. But we're
To
trying to
make it more
engage
B2B, is it still going to be
B2C.
B2C? Okay, business to
No,
consumer.
no,
So
I would
be,
love to get 20 long-term care communities like right in the gate because
yeah,
that would sustain me for the foreseeable future. But senior living's a hard nut to break into.
yes.
So,
Oh, I know
I'm
there's a
trying,
speaker. They don't, people are like, oh, assisted livings and skilled. I'm like, they don't pay professional speakers. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It's like if they, educated the public about that, then those are going to be the brands that people are going to think of working with. But listen, if it,
exactly. I mean, absolutely. The more you do to help educate the public about things and if it's on their behalf, the brand halo,
we all
goes,
win, everybody
go,
wins.
exactly. They don't, yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah,
But yes,
I know. We could, yeah.
yeah.
What are you grateful for today? That's another next question for you.
All right, this is playing to my interviewer here, but I'm grateful for our conversation because
Aw,
it brings out things that I don't maybe think about all the time. And given some, you know, recent things with people in our lives who have gone through health conditions or people who've passed, it's a crazy, it's a crazy time in one's life when, I'm 67 and you start seeing different things. So
yes.
the opportunity to maybe talk about that every once in a while, maybe you don't get. So
Yeah, it tightens
yeah,
your value system, I think. Like,
oh, absolutely,
caregiving changes people, but all of these life situations,
yeah.
they have an impact on you. Well, I mean, Anthony, tell us, is there anything that you wish that we brought up that we didn't bring up?
Good.
How do people stay in touch with you and learn more?
Yep.
Um,
So obviously sagestream.live. Like I said, I think it's a great caregiver respite tool. If mom or dad's watching the show, and you can help set that up, and then you have an hour break to do whatever, have a cup of tea even. or you could share the activity with them and participate, you know. So sagestream.live, the email for that is AC, my Anthony Cirillo, AC at sagestream.live. The other thing I wanted to talk about just quickly is I'm a board member of the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function, imnf.org. That was founded by the great neuroscientist Oliver Sacks. So if
Mm.
anybody's ever seen the movie Alive Inside and what music can do to people, and what, you know, how it ignites your brain, that institute was founded by him and Connie Tomeno, who's now become a good friend, and I'm on the board. And that was
Mm.
a deliberate reach out on my part to get involved because I was getting involved in music and, you know, music therapy in respects. And
Yes.
so I tend to dive deep into the things that I'm doing. So, um, after talking to Connie a couple years ago, and she kept me in mind, and they were trying to rejuvenate the board a little bit, and brought me in. And so they, you know, IMNF, just look at some of the work they
Okay.
do
We'll definitely
with
do that and link to it.
music and health and Parkinson's and mental health, and it goes on and on. And we have a great gala in New York City every year at the New York
Hmm.
Times Center. It's amazing. This year, the format's going to be a little bit different, in terms of there's going to be some workshops before the evening gala, and we always honor people in the industry and then musicians, like Renee Fleming. One year was our
Hmm.
honoree, and others, Glenn Campbell. It's people who have uh, continued the fight around the belief that music is therapy, music is medicine, and
Hmm.
you know, there's something in the UK. Another great link out maybe is called social prescribing. So in our country, we talk about social determinants of health. Like if people don't have transportation, they can't get to their healthcare appointment. That impacts your health. If they don't have a steady food supply of nourishing food, you know, those types of things, housing, whatever. But in the UK, they take this to another level. So in the US, if we have anxiety, you know, half the time more, they want to give you a pill, right?
Yeah.
So in the UK, social prescribing, they're going to prescribe you perhaps a nature walk or an arts program or a music program. They're going to use that therapeutically. And they have
Hmm.
found that A, it saves the health system money, and it also cuts down on the use of pharmaceuticals, which we know is a big issue in senior care.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you have people in nursing homes, and, you know, if it's not a nursing home of high quality and the staff just want to quiet somebody because they just don't feel like dealing with it, uh, that's what happens.
Yes.
So, you know, more music is what we need.
More
And
music. And thank you for
more,
bringing up the social prescribing. So interesting to learn about. I've recently
it
learned
is.
like about like, you know, we've had occupational and speech therapists, but recreational therapists is another whole like thing where people are doing activities in that socialization. But I love that they're prescribing it as, yeah,
Yeah.
getting
And
beyond
I'm
it.
trying to get some physicians locally who are more entrepreneurial to understand the value of this and what it could do, and to even
Mm.
just give out some of our information to caregivers, not even have a formal relationship, but just have my
Just put it out
cards,
there.
put it
Yeah.
out there. And hey, by the way, take this. You might be interested. It might help mom.
Could definitely help mom. Well, this has been so enlightening and engaging. I just appreciate the time with you, Anthony. And you know, we're going to link to Sage Stream Live and hopefully get some subscribers there so we can get the music out into the world that where people can help them with their socialization and their health and happiness ultimately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I thank you. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
All righty.